The president and his team say many of their actions, specifically the creation of the Department of Government Efficiency, will cut waste and fraud at the federal level. But critics like Vermont Congresswoman Balint say what the president is doing is illegal and dangerous. And the Congresswoman joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Thanks for being here. So you were part of the protests outside some of the agencies and the departments that are really in the crosshairs of the Trump administration. You basically said there that the administration is robbing working families to line the pockets of the rich. How?
So when you look at what agencies this president is going after, one of the ones that he through executive order tried to shut down was the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This is the one agency within federal government that literally is about protecting Americans from fraud and from scammers. And it has returned billions and billions of dollars back to Americans in every single state of the union. It doesn't make any sense for them to go after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I say it's illegal because a president cannot dismantle something that has been set up by Congress. Only congressional authority can do that.
And there are a lot of court action taking place right now. But Elon Musk and the president say there are other departments and other agencies in the crosshairs, as I mentioned, that billions and billions of dollars in waste and fraud are happening across government.
They haven't been able to show the results that they claim to be finding. And so I thought it was very interesting when you had Elon Musk in the Oval Office with the president last week having a joint press conference. He said, oh, it's completely transparent. We're posting all of what we're finding on the Doge website. You went to the Doge website. It literally was empty. And so we should always be going after waste, fraud, and abuse. And whenever you have humans, you're going to have some people who are going to try to take advantage of the system. But I don't think giving Elon Musk essentially the keys to the kingdom to muck around in Treasury with our personal information or the Social Security Administration, I don't think that is the right way to go about it. And it certainly isn't the right way to go about it to fire the folks who had been in place to oversee these agencies to make sure there was no waste, fraud, and abuse. And that, of course, is the inspectors general. And so the firing of those people, also the way that the president did it, was in violation of federal law. So I have concerns.
Waste may be in the eye of the beholder as well, right, in this situation, because they're going after DEI contracts, for example, and fraud will be determined by the court. So far, as you said, there's been no proof of criminal wrongdoing provided by the administration.
That's right.
But some of the spending at USAID, for example, it's raising eyebrows on both sides of the aisle. I'm talking about things like $2 million for Moroccan pottery classes, $20 million to create a Sesame Street show in Iraq, a $70,000 DEI musical in Ireland, $9 million meant for food aid in Syria that ended up in the hands of a terrorist. So isn't more oversight than warranted in some areas?
Sure, of course. And I just want to remind people, though, that foreign aid is less than 1% of the federal budget, less than 1%. And billions of dollars that are, rather, people who benefit directly from these programs are actually American farmers who are growing the food, selling it to the government. So it's interrelated. Of course, there are some programs that probably should raise eyebrows. But I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that if you really want to go after where the biggest fraud is, you should be going after the Pentagon budget, which hasn't been able to pass an audit ever. That's where the big money is.
I want to talk about cuts at the NIH as well, which funds advances in medicine and technology. Will these cuts affect places like UVM, the Larner College of Medicine, which is now a highly accredited research school? Will they also hurt Vermonters specifically?
Yes, absolutely. When you look at the freezing of federal aid for programs, for research, it will impact Vermonters, absolutely. Even when you look at things like Head Start, we have Head Start programs that haven't been able to draw down their federal dollars to help them keep those places open. So as we get farther into this administration, I think regular folks on the ground and their families are going to feel the impacts of these. I really want any president to be strategic in how they're going about their work. This feels like an out-of-control sledgehammer right now. And if you really want to partner seriously with Congress to look at waste, fraud, and abuse, we're here for it. Absolutely. But what I don't want is for Elon Musk to be making decisions that impact vital programs. You look at what has happened to veterans in the last week. You had a veterans hotline shut down. You had a specific program at the CDC that is essentially looking at dangers related to possible epidemics. We don't want those people to get fired. We don't want the people watching our nuclear arsenal to get fired. And those things have happened in the last few weeks. So let's be strategic about how we're doing it, and let's be transparent about how we're doing it, and that's not what we're seeing.
The administration argues that, some of these cuts at the NIH will be indirect services, like, things like office space rentals, security, janitorial work, those kind of things, and that billions that will be saved will then be redirected into actual research. What do you think about that?
Show us the proof. Show us the proof. We have gotten such little information from this administration. Usually, every office in Congress has a liaison with the White House. You have a flow of information happening between the legislative and the executive branch. That's not what's happening. It is chaos, it is confusion, and it's creating a sense of instability. And I'm hearing that from a lot of organizations in Vermont, but also a lot of small businesses. They say, we need predictability. This administration is not giving us predictability, whether it is a threatened tariff war with Canada or a trade war with Europe. Both those things create instability in our local businesses, and we will suffer for it.
I want to talk about tariffs in just a moment, but I also want to mention that, people on both sides of the aisle here as well say there is a lot of bloat in administrative costs through the NIH. The Trump administration says a lot of these research schools like Harvard can afford the office space, etc. Are you concerned that these cuts could hurt smaller community hospitals that are participating in these clinical research studies? Right.
I'm always concerned about how it will impact those of us in rural areas. Absolutely. And so I always say there's no such thing as only $100 or $1,000 in Vermont. That's big money. And so what other congressional districts can absorb, we can't here. Absolutely.
The Trump administration has promised to crack down on illegal immigration. Mass deportations was a huge part of his campaign. Vermont farms, Vermont businesses depend on migrant workers. Do you expect deportations in Vermont?
I do expect them. I fear that it will cripple our ag industry, in particular our dairy industry, and we're definitely hearing that across the country. There are oranges that are not being picked. There are people who are not showing up for work because of their fear about deportation. And the other piece that I really want Vermonters to understand is it isn't just folks who are here without documentation that are being swept up. We have many instances of people who are here legally also getting swept up in these raids, and I don't think that's what anybody wanted.
So those raids are happening now in Vermont?
I'm saying across the country. I don't have a specific instance that are happening here, but I do anticipate, if he follows through on what he says he's going to do, that we will see that here.
Now to those tariffs. Vermont does a ton of business with Canada. It's our largest trading partner. We've already talked to businesses who are saying that, we're stocking up now on products because we know they're going to get a lot more expensive. What is this going to do to the economy?
I fear that it's going to cripple the economy, and we're going to have a lot of inflationary pressure. I've heard from many small businesses in Vermont saying having a trade war with Canada will hurt their business and may even put them out of business. And this goes to somebody who is importing windows to build more housing, or somebody who is bringing in lumber, again, to build more housing or expansions for businesses. Or it could be that you run, a little shop that gets a component from Canada. We can't absorb big fluctuations in the prices for some of the things that we are importing. And it also impacts individual Vermonters, and let me explain what I mean. there was a woman who reached out to my office the other day. She had prepaid for her home heating oil. Okay, many of us do that. We try to lock in the price. She had done that. On top of what she had already paid, she got an additional bill because they said, we anticipate that the Trump administration is going to go through with their trade war with Canada, and so we're charging you in advance. And I think we're going to see that more and more because small businesses in Vermont can't absorb the cuts. They're going to pass them on to consumers.
You're on the Judiciary and the budget committees in Congress. A government shutdown looms. What will you and other Democrats do? Do you hold the line, withholding votes on a spending bill or a debt ceiling, and risk a shutdown?
Right. So we have to see what's in the deal. Always you have to see what's in the deal. My North Star is what is going to be good for Vermonters, what's going to be right for the country as a whole. And so right now there is very little communication that's happening between the Speaker and the minority party, the Democrats. And so I have to see what is being offered. What I will not compromise on, I will not compromise on cuts to Medicaid or Social Security. Absolutely will not. I will hold the line. These are programs that Vermonters absolutely depend on. And I fear that what they're setting up for is to claw back money from these programs that folks on a fixed income rely on in order to use that money for a very large tax break to the wealthiest. The very wealthiest among us.
You had proposed a couple of amendments, as far as I know, and those were shot down.
Yeah, because I said, look, because they kept saying, well, this isn't about Medicare, this isn't about Medicaid, this isn't about Social Security. I said, okay, let's get it on the record. Up or down vote. Will you protect Social Security? This is a very simple amendment saying that that's off the table. They would not agree to that.
Do you think a deal will be reached?
I hope a deal will be reached. Will I think it will? What I have seen from my colleagues across the aisle is they are willing to give up a lot of their power to this president and not maintain the power that the legislative branch has in opposition to the executive branch. We have the power of the purse. We are supposed to be making the decisions because we are closest to the people. And I just don't see that happening. So I worry.
President Trump has made several moves, signed executive orders that pertain to trans people. There's a ban on athletes who are competing on women's teams who are trans. Even the federal agency that enforces workplace discrimination now dismissing cases. This is a major shift in civil rights enforcement.
Yes, it is.
So what do you think this means? I mean, we have protections here in Vermont. Are those out the window?
Look, I have been shocked by the level of vitriol that is directed at a very small minority of people in this country. Trans Americans and their families, they're just trying to live their lives. I do have strong concerns about civil rights protections, especially since you have Trump also decimating the Department of Justice and its ability to investigate civil rights violations. And so I know that Vermonters need to hear from me that I am always going to be sticking up for the civil rights of every single Vermonter, and I will be doing that in committee and on the floor. But we should all be shocked that any administration is trying to pit one group of Americans against another. It's not healthy for us as a democracy. It's really not.
A lot of other things that have been signed into executive orders by the president go against Vermont laws. What happens in that scenario?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, some of the executive orders that he has passed have been in violation of federal law and in violation of the Constitution. So they're currently tied up in court right now.
Yeah, Vermont is part of 5 lawsuits
currently.
Currently.
That's exactly right. And so a lot of Vermonters have asked me, why can't I, as a member of Congress, bring a lawsuit? I don't have what's called standing. I can't do that. So we work with outside partners, whether it is the Attorney General of Vermont or an organization that is looking specifically at whether it's voting rights or whether it is civil rights protections. So what we have to do is make sure that these executive orders are not exceeding the authority that the president has within the executive branch. And I'm not just concerned that he's going up just to the line of what his power is, but in many instances is going over the line.
I just want to list off the lawsuits that Vermont is involved in right now. Doge, Elon Musk's authority, banning transgender people from serving in the military, the funding freeze, ending birthright citizenship. More lawsuits are likely. Do you expect they head to the U.S. Supreme Court?
I think some of these will head to the U.S. Supreme Court.
And then what with this conservative court?
So that is what we're all watching right now. That is my biggest fear. Not just that it is a radicalized extremist court that has given this president so much latitude that no other president has ever had, but also, will the president, if the Supreme Court rules against him, will he abide by that decision? I'm very concerned about that.
Congresswoman Becca Balint, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.